Hey everyone! Before we jump into today's episode, we just wanted to give you a quick heads up that topics including school shootings, suicide, and bullying do come up in conversation. So if these subjects are difficult for you, please take care while listening. As a kid, I always saw my parents just, talking to the people around them and not really having any hesitation about that. But people are like, oh, you don't really do that anymore. You don't just start talking to the person next to you who's a stranger. But I feel like I've almost come back to, I'm in my mid 20s. I have more of a sense of self at this point in my life. And I feel like I'm in a place now where I want that. Like, I want to connect with the people around me who are strangers. And I feel like those moments really can end up like redefining your life. Like, those can end up being big moments.
Welcome to This Helps, where we sit down with the world's leading helpers to find out how they're helping and also what helps them. By the end of this episode, you'll have practical tools to improve your own mental health. I'm Marlon Morgan, founder and CEO of Wellness Together, an organization dedicated to improving the mental health of thousands of people every day. Join me and my insightful Gen Z co-host Hannah Ravitch as we sit down for authentic and vulnerable conversations with people dedicated to helping others. What helps? Let's find out. Welcome to This Helps. This is the inaugural year of when we bring on the show a couple people that you just heard about in the last couple talks that we've put in the feed. We have a one and only Oliver Morgan, my 11-year-old son. Say what's up.
What's up?
Okay, and you can tell that's a very cool person. So another one of my favorite guests of all time before he says a word, possibly one of the best guests we've ever had, at least in my opinion, because I've known him his whole life. It's my younger brother, Gabriel Leporati. Gabe, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Marlon. It's an honor to be here. This podcast has helped me both personally and professionally, so I'm very happy and honored to be here.
Oh, I like what you did there. You brought in the This Helps theme already, so I know this is going to be great. Gabe, can you describe a little bit about your current role in mental health and kind of how you got there?
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I have a influential and wonderful older brother who I followed in the footsteps of and ended up becoming a licensed therapist and a school counselor because I watched him do that and was inspired by that and saw the change and hope he was instilling in youth and wanted to be a part of that. So I had the wonderful opportunity to spend some of my career within Wellness Together itself. I then went off and completed my hours for licensure in a different role in the school setting and was able to blend the school role with the clinical role in a public school setting for 3 years. And I now work at the Sacramento County Office of Education here, doing similar work to Wellness Together. We put mental health therapists into schools in Sacramento County and bill through Medi-Cal. So it's slightly different from Wellness Together, but very much share in their mission and passionate about increasing access to mental health services for our youth.
Well, thank you for doing that. It's not an easy job. And I do want to make the point, probably the most important point, that the brother you talked about earlier when you were saying all those nice things, that's me.
Absolutely.
Right?
It
okay.
was.
Okay.
It was,
I just want everyone to know I'm kind of I like to get credit, big credit guy. So
credit where credit's due.
Yeah. No, I can't believe, I love our friendship and relationship, and obviously love you, and I have loved seeing you thrive in this field. You've done a lot already, more than I had at your age, and so loving that we get to have you on the show today.
Thank you. Love you too.
I am so happy you're both here, and we're all here because I needed your help. I needed the help of other generations to ask my co-host, Gen Z representative Hannah Ravitch, all about what it's like to be born between the years of 1997 and 2012.
Yes.
Wait, yeah.
Oh yeah, I think,
2012.
and then by 1 year, represented here, we have a cuspy old millennial, which is myself. I don't really think that I'm part of Gen X, and I've never really felt that close to like colorless Pepsi and sort of the first couple Back to the Future movies. So that's how I know. And I had some cousins that were Gen X, and they were always doing like weird punk rock stuff I didn't understand. So I think being 1980, I'm going to give myself cuspy millennial, and then we have Gabe, who is next, and he's really just cuspy on the other side, just almost Gen Z. Is that what you would say, Gabe?
Yeah, I'd say millennial, just standard. Maybe you could consider it elder millennial. I've heard that thrown around for late 80s, but early 90s contingent. So I remember most of the 90s, which
respectful. Who's referring to you as an elder millennial?
I'm trying to get Oliver to do it, but he hasn't been so far.
Oliver?
Yeah.
Can you address your uncle as an elder millennial right now?
Not at all.
I respect that. Yeah,
that's a hard pass from Oliver. And then comes Hannah, square in the middle.
That's
maybe
me.
a little early. Genzer. How do you feel about Genzer? Does that feel derogatory?
It doesn't feel derogatory, but I just don't like it. It feels wrong.
It's what I have to call you so that I feel okay about being the new boomer. So let's go ahead and get used to it. And Oliver, what generation are you?
Gen A.
Gen A? Is that better than Gen Z?
Totally.
So Gen A for Gen Alpha. And what year were you born?
2013.
All right. He said it with pride. I think no one's going to argue with that. Today, we're going to be asking, really, we're here to find out about Gen Z. We're here to find out from Hannah what it's like to, when you're 12 years old, for the country to hit the critical mass of people having a smartphone. We're going to ask things like, what's it like being a digital native, always being online? The internet has been part of your life really from the start. And we're also going to take a brief moment to do jokes that only people from the 90s or older would understand. Like, we're going to thank Al Gore for not only the inconvenient truth he brought to our attention recently in the recent decade, but also for inventing the internet. So we'll shout out Al and Tipper Gore for that.
Tipper Gore.
Hannah, how do you feel about being a representative for your generation?
A little bit of pressure, but I'm excited.
Are people going to be able to tell you what they think about your impressions and harshly judge your answers online on our Instagram or any of our social channels?
Totally. You can find us at This Helps Podcast on Instagram and TikTok, and we'd love to know what you think.
All right. Well, first question. Let's start with Oliver, since he's going to have to go to bed in like 5 minutes because he's a baby.
Got him.
Our incredible producer, Andrea, often will come in over our headphones and tell us what we're doing wrong and things that we could have asked to make the show better. And she just did that. So she said, what did you tell Oliver and do about coming on the show today? And do 11-year-olds even know what podcasts are?
Yes, I do know what podcasts are. I listen to a few of them, and I listen to one each day.
What podcasts do you listen to? What are your favorite?
It's called Yodo Daily.
He's always practicing his British accent.
Tell us about those drawings.
It's from somebody who lives in the UK, and each day he comes out with a 10-minute long episode, and it's like facts or like jokes or like draw-alongs and stuff.
What's a draw-along?
Or he'll describe what he's drawing, and then we'll draw it on our paper.
Okay. Okay, I recently came into your room and you were drawing a Jordan 1, the shoe. Was that from your podcast or was that just something you wanted to draw?
Something that I wanted to draw.
Okay. Light flex. What were your feelings when we said you were going to come on today?
I was kind of nervous, but knowing that my dad is here with me, I felt more confident about it.
Hell yeah. Nice.
That's super sweet. I love that. We're happy to have you.
Thank you.
I got to be honest, Oliver, knowing that you're here is making me more confident.
Thank you.
Before you go, because I know you have to read you like the Llama Llama Goodnight book pretty soon. That's right. That's all 11-year-olds are doing that.
Unless they have a dad like this.
Good. But what's the word on the street in 5th grade? What do you talk about? Like, okay, say you're going to school, things get quiet in the class. You can't have phones in your class, can you?
No.
No? So you guys have to talk to each other?
Yeah.
What do you say?
We basically just talk about like what we're doing, especially if the teacher reminds us not to talk unless we're talking about what we're working on.
Oh, okay. Strict teacher, huh?
Not really.
No? You appreciate the guidance, the structure?
Yeah.
What about recess? What kind of kind of topics you getting into?
I play basketball every recess with my friends, and we have a lot of fun.
Have you been bragging about the Sacramento Kings lately and the winning streak?
No.
Well, that's nice. I know that's a big deal. And
just kidding. Yes.
I'm glad you came clean. JK. Okay, I think we've exhausted your knowledge of this generation, at least what you want to share with us on the show. Is there anything else you want us to know about what it's like to be in 5th grade today?
I'm probably one of the ones without a phone in my class.
Okay, so how many kids are in your class?
31.
And how many kids in your class don't have a phone?
3 to 4.
3 or 4? When do the phones come out? Like, is it often? Do they come out during the day? Can you have them out?
No.
Okay. What's it like to not have a phone? What does it feel like?
Sometimes I kind of want one, but then I remember how it might affect you in life, and I don't want that until a later time.
You kind of mentioned what it's like hanging out with. We have some family friends and maybe people in your class, and they're your age, but they have a phone. What's the difference between hanging out with a kid who doesn't have one and hanging out with one who does?
I definitely only take friends to my house who don't have phones, and I feel like I have a lot more fun with them and like understanding them.
Yeah. Are the other ones boring or what?
No, they just kind of ignore the other person and don't really listen to what they want to say to each other.
Yeah, you've mentioned that, and I couldn't be more proud of your ability to see the benefits of that. And I'm glad that you're able to do that. It's kind of nice to have a childhood before you get all the information in the world, probably. Proud of you, bud.
Thank you.
What a cool, fun, smart, buff guy you are.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. We'll see you. Love you.
Okay, I love you.
Okay.
That was a good segue.
What did you think?
I don't know what that feels like, being in 5th grade and being surrounded by everyone having a phone. I didn't even experience that. So it's interesting to hear just his experience. And I would also be curious to hear from one of those students who does have a phone and see how they feel about the situation and if they feel like they have close friendships the way that Oliver describes his friends and being able to connect with people in a deeper way.
I wonder about that too. And I know there's a big push to kind of, along with the phone bans and the talk of the mental health crisis, there's just more questions as to how we're defining things. I'm not sure that everyone in his class, when you say friend, you know, in one of our episodes, we talked to Dr. Michael Rich, and he wrote the book, The Mediatrician's Guide. But, you know, he made the point that when Facebook named friends and redefined it, we lost a lot there. And so I'm wondering if we'd have to really come to a consensus on how we define everything, and even deeper than that, because if I say I have a deep friendship with somebody or a really strong connection, that could mean something totally different.
Right.
Yeah. What about for Gen Z? Have you noticed a shift even in your, 24 years of this being on this earth? Have you noticed a shift in relationships?
I, of course, can only speak to my experience because I know some other people might say something different, but even just in a recent article that I was reading, they talk about the amount of people just ordering food to go or door dashing food. And it's like, that's something that didn't exist before. But just in terms of, relationships, like even being out in the grocery store and you're waiting in line to check out and you just see people standing there on their phone. And I feel like I didn't even, as a kid, I was always a very quiet kid. So that was one thing that I had to overcome just personally. But even at that time, I still, noticed everything. And I always saw my parents just, talking to the people around them and not really having any hesitation about that. But even as I've gotten older, it's like people are like, oh, you don't really do that anymore. You don't just start talking to the person next to you who's a stranger. But I feel like I've almost come back to, I'm in my mid-20s. I have more of a sense of self at this point in my life. And I feel like I'm in a place now where I want that. Like, I want to connect with the people around me who are strangers. And I feel like those moments really can end up like redefining your life. Like those can end up being big moments.
Do you ever feel like that, Gabe?
Yeah, I do. I think you brought up the DoorDash example, and things are so convenient now, which I've seen shift a lot, even in my adulthood. I don't really go to the store as much as I used to. And it's one of my favorite authors, Kurt Vonnegut, talks about his wife one time asked him, he kept going to the store just for envelopes. And he brought up that he did it for the novelty. He could have it shipped to his house, even back in, I think that was probably the 70s or 80s when this was taking place. But he's talked about how we're all animals having unique experiences on Earth. And we lose a lot of that, even those. And I think going back to Oliver's generation, I was a school counselor at elementary school a few years ago. And you do have to define what a friend is. And then you're also working with them this is what a sad face looks like. This is what a happy face looks like, because they're just not getting that socialization as much as we did, even in my generation. So it's, we think we're undervaluing those experiences. And that's something you taught me, Marlon, because some of my favorite times growing up were just us messing around town, and going to stores and
hanging out.
Never really had an agenda.
Going to pick out movies at Blockbuster.
Exactly, yeah.
So many people will never know the joy of just handing you a movie that could be embarrassing and then saying, no, and then you take it and then you say, no, I don't want to watch this. I didn't pick this.
Yeah. Exactly.
But yeah, that's how it went.
And now that's a 10-second transaction that would take us all afternoon. Just how do we replicate those experiences and still value? Because you can be productive 100% of your day if you want to now, but where are you building in that time for? I'm going to use the word whimsy. I'm probably gonna get made fun of. I'm gonna get made fun of by my brother.
No, that's cool.
But
no, that's good.
The word
that's
I'm
good.
going with.
This is a safe place.
Especially for kids, though. I mean, that's what childhood's all about. And we need more of that.
Whimsical. I think that the article you're referring to, Hannah, the antisocial century, is that what it's called?
Yeah.
It's an Atlantic article. It's very good. It was long, and it talked a lot about the way we survived for thousands of years is to be social, to know people, to be able to know if you can trust them or not, to read facial expressions. And now we've put convenience above everything else and staying distracted. And it's just so hard to watch sometimes, because even in the studies where they will have people go on a commuter bus and they'll say, today, I don't want you to talk to anyone, just read or do something else. And the next day they'll say, I do want you to talk to somebody you never talked to. When they come back and look at the results there's a lot of studies like that. Every time the person is much happier when they have talked to somebody, even though it feels awkward at first, or you put something out there. Our last guest, before we did the 2 bonus episodes, Dr. Louise Hayes, I feel like she said it best when she said, you can be on your phone all the time and it could make you feel safe, but is that the way you want to keep yourself safe? Mm-hmm. And I thought that was the most loving version of have some courage, get off your phone and enjoy your life while you're still living it, because it doesn't last forever. But she said it in such a nicer way than that. I think the article was called The Antisocial Century by Derek Thompson. So it is worth a read. I put a little comment on my very infrequent social media use on LinkedIn and just kind of titled it, Stop Optimizing and Start Socializing. And that's kind of the moral of the article.
You mentioned phones feeling safe. I think that is the case for so many people. I know that especially for me during high school, my phone was my safety net. And it's something that I'm actively trying to break, because I would call it that. I would always, if I didn't have my phone with me, I would feel overwhelmed. I would feel more anxious. I would just feel off. And I also have, and still do, struggle with social anxiety. And that was one thing that always helped me, actually, was having my phone on me and knowing it's my out in a lot of situations of, if I'm just looking at my phone, then I don't have to talk to that person. Or if I fake a phone call, which I have very much done, then someone won't come up and talk to me. And I'm in a place now where, like I mentioned earlier, it's like I have realized I actually enjoy talking to other people. And even though I might still be nervous at first, I normally learn something, or it leaves me feeling positive or feel good about humanity. And those moments are so important. And it's just so hard to see past that when you're so stuck in this mindset and everyone around you probably feels the same, but then it's like no one's really talking about it. So then you just kind of all conform to this idea.
That was the experience I had when I first moved down to Southern California. I had this one friend who, it was the only person I knew in the area, and I went over there to hang out with them and say, "Hey, what have you been doing, man? What's going on?" And wanted to just hang out and talk. And he started to tell me, I've been surfing and been doing these other totally SoCal bro things that he was talking about. And all of a sudden he kind of had this thought and stopped talking and said, "You know what? I don't really need to explain all this. Actually, have you heard of Facebook? You can go on my Facebook and kind of just see what I'm into. I have the bands that I like on there, and some other people I met down here too, so you can meet them." And that was the last time I ever hung out with that guy, and I've never forgot it, because I was like, I don't want to do this. Why would I? What do I want to create a website to hang out? I just want to. We're hanging out right here. So I've always been sad for everyone who's had that safety net, and I just don't know that, because you said, help me. And I understand how it would feel like it's helping you to get through the moment, but like, does it eventually make it harder
Yes,
to talk to people?
totally. I feel like in some ways we do see that with the increase in loneliness and people not having connections or relationships, because at a certain point, it's like, even going back to door dashing, it's like, if you don't have to even talk to someone or have a 5-minute interaction with someone to even get your food, it's like people could live for weeks without even leaving their house. Like, that really is the world that we live in today.
Gosh, I've done it too, though, because when you order it, you're like, I paid all this money for this to get delivered. The last thing I want to have to do is pay for to meet someone I don't really, well, I won't ever talk to again. That seems like hassly. So you just kind of like quietly skulk around the front door and peek out of it and then wait for them to quietly leave that crinkly bag. And it's just kind of like, well, what did I just do that for? That person looked nice. I probably could have said hi to them. And they're lonely too. What a lonely job that is.
Yeah. But I also just want to make the point too of like, I don't think that it's bad to DoorDash food, or, it's like everything in moderation and in a balance that works for you. But just being mindful about what you're doing, it's like, if you want a day to do nothing and talk to no one and you need that reset, I think that's great. And I totally support that. But then if you get to a place where you can start recognizing your patterns, and if you've been in that pattern for several days, it's like, okay, maybe it's time to go outside and go stop at the pastry shop or whatever down the street.
I think it's always time to do that, but that's just me. What I thought was funny earlier is you talked about faking a phone call. I don't know that would even be believable now because nobody's calling anybody. Would that even be? And the other thing is, if someone's nervous enough or feeling anxious enough to fully fake like an audible phone call, I kind of have to respect that. At least you're having to know that you did that. I think that does raise the awareness that you're asking us to look for.
I don't know if I feel like I would just put the phone up to my ear. I don't think I would actually like talk, but then I still look like I'm on the phone. So gets the job done.
Okay. That's the Gen Z version of, because like if you could fake phone calls too in the late 90s, but you better be talking, because otherwise someone's going to come up and talk to you.
How did you, so if this is just your normal, because when I was in high school, it was like we had one rich kid that had a phone that would sort of work sometimes, and we would all take it from him and like use it. So it was kind of a communal phone, and it was so weird to even have a phone. It was like the opposite. So how did you even know, like you said, this is my safety blanket, or however you phrased it, something similar to that? What helped you realize that this isn't normal to have to need this device to feel safe?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, I'll start by saying I was one of the few people going into high school, my freshman year of high school, that did not have a smartphone. I had I don't remember what brand of phone it was, but it was one that you would like push, slide
like a sidekick?
It didn't flip. Yeah, you could type. It wouldn't flip, but you would slide it up, and then there was like keypad underneath. And I always felt like insecure and ashamed of not having a smartphone. So that was, I feel like, a more unique experience, and something that now a lot of people, even younger, so I was 13, 14 at the time, having that experience. And yeah, so that was interesting. My sophomore year of high school, I believe, is when I got a smartphone. In terms of realizing when, I don't even know if it happened while I was experiencing it. I think that the realization is something that came as I got older, and in college, I studied psychology and sociology. And so when I started learning about more of these things, and I am one of those people that questions things. I'm very curious about things. So it's really interesting for me to think about because I don't feel like in the moment what I was feeling was anxiety. But I didn't have the realization at the time of, oh, I'm feeling anxious because X, Y, and Z. And when I didn't have my phone or when my parents would take my phone away, that was always the hardest thing. And again, in the moment, it didn't feel like I could rationalize or understand fully what I was experiencing. You know, I'm 15 years old, I'm 16 years old. So there was just a lot of emotion behind that. But I feel like a lot of it came down to like FOMO and not knowing what other people are doing, even though thinking back to that now, it's like that also is anxiety. And that's just fueling what I'm already feeling. So it's, to me, that's such a complex question because I feel like if you were to ask anyone, you know, a 12-year-old nowadays, I feel like they wouldn't even realize. I feel like the anxiety is almost like a part of them because they've had phones since they were, you know, however old.
I think the anxious generation is sadly named. I was thinking about it earlier because there is actually another generation called the greatest generation. And so I felt really bad because I feel like people have kind of made our kids anxious through their, you know, trying to get attention and profits. And then they have called them the anxious generation as if it's their fault or something. But FOMO is like a really old, it's one of the oldest causes of anxiety you can have. Imagine, you know, if you did need other people to survive hundreds of years ago and you started missing out on stuff like where's the water and how do I eat the right food and not die. So like all that is like a hijacking of our nervous system and our evolutionary, you know, propensity to stick together and help each other. It's such a like a fake version of it because you can survive. It just feels like you're not going to. So like when people freak out and they get their phones taken away, it feels like you're literally going to die.
Yeah.
Especially in the teen years, because there's nothing more important to you than being part of that friend group and being accepted.
Yeah.
It makes total sense. If you were, it was the opposite when I grew up. If you had a phone on a school campus, people were like, "What are you, a coke dealer or a what are you trading on Wall Street during government GovEcon?" Like you would be literally made fun of hard if your phone rang in school. And the cool thing was a pager. You could have a pager, which didn't make sense at all because whoever was going to page you, and all that paged me was like my mom. Like you couldn't even call them back. So, and I remember the anxiety from that. That was too much for me. So I can't imagine what it was like to grow up and feel like you're always needing to be part of something that you could never be part of all of it. You just can't handle that much information.
No. Yeah. And now I jokingly, but also genuinely am like, I want that phone back, that phone I had when I was 13 years old. Like I feel like I would thrive if I had a little flip phone. I feel like that's partly why they're somewhat making a comeback, or at least in a different way. I had this thought as I was getting ready for my day this morning in preparation sort of for this podcast. And I was thinking about how in middle school, I feel like that was the time that I first started learning about different social media apps. So that was the first time I learned about Instagram and Snapchat and Facebook. And my first time being cyberbullied was in middle school. And I was thinking about that this morning and I was like, that's super interesting because I feel like had all those apps not existed and this one person, if they had no way of contacting me online. I had never once talked to this person in person.
They just bullied you, like
Yeah.
you got onto your page and
Facebook,
said stuff?
actually. Facebook.
Was it a...
Messaged me directly, so no one else could see, but
What?
would message me like pretty terrible things for a middle schooler. And yeah, I was just having that thought this morning of like, that, you know, is something that very much impacted me as a kid.
Yeah, how could it not? That'd be like someone penning a letter and sending it snail mail. Like, that'd be
Right.
ridiculous.
Yeah. And the fact that we never talked in person, you know? And I just think about kids nowadays and how, like, you know, you just hear about the number of suicides. And, you know, it's like, it makes sense to me, but it's so terrible. And I'm like, I feel like it's clear. It's like these kids are being bullied online.
You're living for that acceptance at that time in your life. And when you get the opposite, I mean, that must feel completely hopeless. And and it's like there forever, especially if it's in front of other people.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I don't even like when I get an email that I can't tell the tone of it. Right. I don't think I would have ever been able to survive that. So honestly, I know you're saying it's getting deep or upsetting, but like,
it's reality. Yeah. Unfortunately. Yeah.
How do you feel like that's changed you? Fast forward to never getting cyberbullied on Facebook. You're now 24. You never had a phone.
Ooh, I have no idea. At my core, I feel like I would be the same person and have the same interests and same passions and hobbies. But the anxieties and the fears and a lot of my thought patterns and processes and all of that, I think would be completely different. Mm. And even today, it's like I deleted TikTok off my phone a year ago because I was like, I can't do this anymore. And TikTok wasn't even, in my experience, it didn't feel particularly harmful to my mental health directly, but I was just constantly scrolling. And then, you know, so it's like indirectly affecting my mental health because then I'm not doing anything else and scrolling on my phone. And
it's like what you're not doing that could be helping your mental health, like getting out and talking to people.
But I feel with Instagram, that is a place that, you know, even in middle school, when I first downloaded Instagram, that has always been a place that has felt more harmful to me in ways. And again, that's just my personal experience, but I do know a lot of people who feel similar. And I feel like I'm in a place where I am trying to distance myself from social media. And I go through phases where I'm like, I wish I didn't have a phone. And I do think that it would make such a huge difference. Even being 24, it's like I do still feel young. And, you know, it's like even changes that I implement now are still going to affect the next years of my life. So I feel like it's not too late to implement that.
24 is not too late. I want to do a quick little exercise with both of you, and that is, if it was a person, and Instagram, if it was a person, describe them. Who wants to go first?
I would just say a liar.
Good.
Your basic liar?
What? Yeah.
That's good. Okay.
A liar who's
honest.
Trying to, I don't know if magazines are still, I don't really see a lot of magazines, but that was, if you're trying to make a magazine of yourself and lie to people about what you look like and what you do, Instagram.
I feel like you can only value, like when Instagram came out, believe it or not, it was kind of like the non-academic alternative to Facebook because it was just pictures. It was like if you went from
Twitter.
Reading novels. Oh yeah, right. And then Twitter.
Yeah. It was like the popular kids Twitter.
Yeah. It was like the just go back to just the title of a novel. I just want to hear the title of it, not really anything about it. But yeah, it was like if you can't put something on there that looks good immediately to everyone, then it's worthless. You shouldn't even be on there.
Did you ever get a real Instagram? Like when they would give you, we had that one year in class where they would bring you, it was before Instagram, and they brought us like a card and some, I don't know if it was just a
like a
local,
birthday gram or something.
it was like a real Instagram. It was like but
is that what they
neither here
called it
nor.
at your
What
school?
is that?
Yeah, it was like on Valentine's Day. They would bring, you could send it to your secret admirer,
Oh, got
and
it.
they would send you like balloons and a little note. That was the first time I heard the word Instagram. I might be remembering that wrong, but it was some sort of gram, candy gram or something.
How many did you send out?
I sent a few. I didn't get a great response, but yeah,
Kind of you were throwing it all against the wall.
I had to cast a wide net, and
Yeah.
it was, live and learn, but I gave it a shot.
Good. I just stuck with in the early 90s graham crackers, and my Instagram was like whenever I needed a snack, I was just right there with the milk. Dad joke.
Is that also mid 2000s for you? That's still a
That's
current
just kind of
trend.
every day. Yeah, it's just kind of every day. I don't.
But you asked a good question. I want to hear Hannah's answer too. Mine was a little bit non-specific, but how would you
kind of half baked?
Yeah. Speaking of graham crackers,
yeah.
How would you describe a person that was Instagram? That's a good question.
I've been thinking about it, and I feel like I don't even have the right words, but I'm just imagining a person who acts like they care about you and about things, but then doesn't. Like maybe someone who's apathetic.
Are they kind of thinking about what they're going to say all the time, never really listening to what you're saying? Is that, or am I off on that?
I mean, I think that could be true. I'm just imagining it as someone who's just like indifferent.
Why indifferent? Because it seems like it's all about having an opinion about what you're seeing.
My thing with Instagram is I feel like people just get so immersed in it. I was in Big Bear this past weekend, and a perfect example of this is a group of us went snowboarding, and we left in the morning, and there were 3 people outside taking pictures in the snow out front of their cabin. And we got back home at 4 p.m., like 6 hours later, and jokingly, one of the people we were with was like, oh, they've been out here all day, because there were people, like these same people, again, outside taking pictures in front of their cabin in the snow. So it's like when you're operating thinking about like, oh, let me take pictures to post, I'm like, that's sort of a specific, it's so hard for me to describe
like a hustle,
what would
hustle
Instagram
culture.
look like, because
you're doing a great job. I feel like you're doing a great job. It's like a hustle culture, solopreneur, someone who describes themselves in the very same way. I think that's perfect. If the first thing you do when you see beautiful snow falling is get your ass out there and get a selfie, you are Instagram.
Yeah.
All right, Facebook. Taking it all the way back.
I feel like I wouldn't even know on this one.
Gabe, can you say it but not get us canceled?
Yeah, I can. I can do that. I'm trying to think of a celebrity maybe just to have the whole picture, but probably maybe like somebody like a Marvel actor, but in 20 years, like what they're gonna look like, maybe like what
Downey Jr.
Yeah, well,
like an aging A-lister.
Who's the guy that plays Thor? Like maybe Chris Hemsworth in 30 years. Like
don't act like you don't know what his name is. You already said it like twice.
The Hemsworth brothers?
No. Which one is your question?
Yeah, I
love those guys.
I would say like an aging. Yeah, I can't even think. Going back to the 90s, what's the guy that was like in the commercials with the long hair?
Thor? I don't know.
No, it's a really common one.
Fabio?
Yeah, Fabio. Yeah.
Fabio, the guy who got hit by a bird on a roller coaster?
Fabio, but also he's lying to you, but these lies are something about how there's, vaccines are tracking you or something. Like he's lying to you in a really disturbing way.
But he's buff and like kind of like
he had it. Like he's still making ends meet, he's got People are still wanting to message with him and work with them. Fabio probably still could be in commercials, but
Yeah.
he's not the household name he was. And
Right.
he's also just gone off the deep end, It's just
I haven't been keeping up. I haven't been keeping up.
Yeah. Well, people are trying not to. And he's also poking you for some reason. Are you old enough for that feature? Remember that feature?
Yes.
Oh, like anyone's old enough for that feature.
I always thought it was so fun. I mean, it's like giving someone a high five or something. It's except it's virtual. So,
What happened to that? Did that get canceled? The whole Facebook poke?
You can't do it anymore. I've been told. So
Did you consult yesterday's version of yourself?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I feel like for Facebook, what comes to mind for me is Dog the Bounty Hunter's wife. I don't know if you've ever seen that individual. And I feel like she would be messaging. I think we should put a picture of Dog the Bounty Hunter's wife. I hope she's still alive because I don't like to talk, speak ill of people who've passed on.
We're not.
She looks a lot like Dog the Bounty Hunter, really.
She does.
Similar.
I have some sad news.
Oh no, don't tell me, Dog. Is it Mrs. Dog?
Yes.
Oh,
I'm so sorry to laugh. In 2019, she passed away at 51.
Gabe just poured out water for her. And I'll do the same.
Yeah.
Wow. Does it say how?
We're not saying anything about her. Just describing her look. She's
wow.
Rest in peace. Rest in peace.
Yeah, no, that's Beth Chapman. We see you. See, rest in power, Beth.
Mm-hmm. To that big bounty in the sky.
She had cancer.
Our producer Andrea did put a quote in in the iMessage we use when we're recording, and so Hannah, why don't you do us the honors? This is about Beth Chapman, Dog's wife.
It's 5:32 in Hawaii. This is the time she would wake up to go hike. Sorry, that really got me.
Well, you got to start over. You got no. You got to start over. This is truly disrespectful if you don't read this without laughing. You have to solemnly read this. This is Dog tweeting this. I guess, is he still alive?
He is. I did not fact check that, but I'm assuming he is.
Okay, I'm honestly hoping he's not because I'm scared to death.
Yeah.
With respect, Hannah.
It's 5:32 in Hawaii. So sorry.
I'll take a shot.
Okay, thank you.
It's 5:32 in Hawaii. No, that's how iMessages work. Yes, that's it. No wonder you're not depressed. All right. It's 5:32 in Hawaii. This is the time she would wake up and go up and hike. You do it either.
Producer of the year. This is a great poll.
I'm gonna try to.
Laugh is hard and so
long. This guy's gonna kill me. Oh my god!
Have a bounty on you.
I do now.
No, he can't set and collect the bounty. That's not how bounty hunting works.
The bounty he's collecting is going to be my pride for his.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Okay, Andrea, she said she needs a clean read. So here I go. I'm going to try it one more time. I'm not going to look at either of you. It's 5:32 in Hawaii. This is the time she would wake up and go hike Cocoa Head Mountain. Her husband tweeted, "Only today she hiked the stairway to heaven." End quote. Dog the Bounty Hunter.
Producer of the year.
Producer of the year. Dog. True poet. Wow. Okay. So I do think we need to get back to, because I'm really liking this game, and I like that you actually, I think like saying what celebrity the network would be is actually a pretty good way to go about it. So Hannah, you look like you wanted to say something before we moved on.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of circling back to what I said about Instagram being a person, but I also just want to make the point too that it's like I, I feel like people are going to argue for both sides of all social medias, but I
Mhm.
feel like one, taking pictures isn't necessarily harmful. I have so many photos, but I take photos with the intention of keeping photos for memory's sake, which again, some people could argue that that's unnecessary, but that's my approach to it. But I don't think that there's harm in using social media platforms to post if it's done with the right intention. Because I've talked with my friends about this, and we have agreed that it's really fun to post on social media when you're doing it for yourself as like a photo dump, essentially. But it's something that like I have done is create an Instagram that literally my three closest friends follow. And that's kind of what I use as like, I'd just say, like, this was my month. And I would just post a bunch of photos that to me were like my highlights of the month. And I feel like that is very different than taking pictures with the intention of posting them, which then comes with the mentality of, checking for likes and checking for comments and that other sense of validation.
I love it. I think that sounds like the best possible use of a social media account.
Yeah. It's
I'm sure
hard
that people, I'm sure
too.
the people who run social media don't like it because it probably doesn't make them very much money. Why wouldn't you do that on like a shared album so you don't have to like get advertised to?
That exists also. So for me, like my intention behind that account in particular was I wanted an outlet. Like I wanted it to be a creative outlet as opposed to just a shared album where photos are shared. And so I took certain photos and I still did it in a way that I was like, I like how these look together and all of that. But the intention with posting it wasn't, let me post this on my actual Instagram page where all these people can see it. That actually stresses me out. And I've had that conversation with my friends too of, I honestly would be curious to ask them again because the last time we had this conversation was a while ago. But when I was more active and would post, I would always get anxious before I posted. And I could never explain that feeling. And then I'd ask my friends about it and they'd be like, yeah, I feel the same way. But then you just do it and then you kind of stop thinking about it. And then you start getting likes and then it switches into that like hit of dopamine. So
You really gotta earn it with that. That almost mimics the whole process of like just getting to know someone in person, but scarier. I think that's scarier. Do you know why it was so anxiety provoking at first? Have you kind of thought through that?
I think for me, it was just the like the number of people who are going to see it, which is scary. It's a scary thought when it's like, hundreds of people are going to see this thing that I posted and could potentially have judgment about it or whatever. And then it's just letting in all these thoughts and, patterns.
I wonder how important timing is to all that because it's funny because I wouldn't even want to do that really, but I don't have a problem calling someone on the phone. And you and I have worked together for a while now,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not trying to, and this isn't just you. I've
Oh, you could
noticed
call
this
me out
with
though. Yeah.
most people that are, younger or Gen Z seem to have a real problem with phone calls.
Yes.
What is that? But you can post a picture that hundreds of people are going to see and possibly forever and maybe thousands. What's the difference?
I think it's because of the unknown aspect of a phone call. Like, you don't know what the other person is going to say, and then you have to be able to respond in the moment, as opposed to if you're posting something, it's like you could delete it or it's like delayed. Like, if you end up getting feedback on that for whatever reason, I think it comes down to like a false sense of control about the situation.
That makes sense.
Yeah. But I've tried to dissect that for myself with phone calls, because it is something that I am working on, and I feel like I've gotten better at it. But it is very, like, everyone around me, I feel like no one wants to make the phone call. And even when we're like ordering food, we're like, okay, who's making the phone call? Like, it's always a thing like that. But I have tried to think more about it, of like what feels scary about it, because it does feel scary. And I think for me, at least, it is that sense of unknown. And even I have a memory of being in elementary school and calling my friend's house, like their landline, to ask their parent if I could hang out with their parent, who would answer the phone to ask if I could hang out with my friend. And I would rehearse in my head. Even in elementary school, I would rehearse what I was going to say in my head. I didn't just pick up the phone and do it. And it's that mentality that has carried through into how I make phone calls now. But also it's funny, because if I start overthinking it, then I can't do it. I feel like I'm in a place now where if I'm like, okay, let me call this person, I just have to do it. Because if I sit there and start writing out a script or whatever, then I start rehearsing it and overthinking it, and then it just spirals.
You got to be honest. Have you ever had to call me, and did you write a script for it?
No. Complete honesty.
That makes sense. And I remember being in high school and having to call. And if you think talking to a parent about, imagine calling like a girl's house you like and being like, hey, can I talk to, unsaid high school crush? And that is absolutely terrifying. So I kind of get it. And then even if you did get past, it was like a video game. If you got past the boss was at the beginning, because it was like a mom or a dad. And so if you got past the boss, then you had a much longer, more difficult, but more rewarding, hopefully, conversation. But I remember when I first got a chance to call, like the girl I like said I could call her house. And I wrote up a list of topics that I could like pull from, because I was like, what if it gets quiet? It's awkward. We don't know what to say. So I thought I get a script, but I think, as I got older, I think I just had to call people so much that it felt more in control than putting something out on the internet.
Yeah.
Also, I don't think I've ever I don't know if you know about this phenomenon, and you have to tell me if Gen Z ever does this, because I know Gen Z does quiet quit, and I've seen it. And I know that millennials do rage quit, because I've done it. And I know that when hold on. When I've never felt more in control of anything than when I rage quit a phone call. Have you ever hung up on someone? It's incredible. And if you hung up on them in like before texts, you could hang up and you could take your phone off the hook, which was that's the power move to end all power moves.
Yeah, absolutely. The being able to slam that thing.
You slam it. You can't. It's not just like a tap of a tiny piece of glass. It's like you slam the phone. So does Gen Z know that you can just like call up a restaurant and start ordering, and then if you don't like how it's going, you could just hang up and never talk to them again?
Yeah. I would assume so. I know that. But that's very, very interesting, because then immediately I'm like, well, they'd have my phone number.
Yeah, that's true. Because like they had your phone number back in the day too, but
it was less directly connected to you. Yeah.
They couldn't just like fire off a text message and be like,
yeah,
you nerd. It was a simpler time, Hannah. It was a simpler time.
But yeah, it makes sense. I think you both are talking about like how you overcome anxiety is to face it head on like that. And if there's a way out, I would have taken it, and if you don't have to talk to that first boss, that parent, I definitely would have taken that way out and never got used to it. So it makes sense. But those connections you make on the phone are, for me, like formed lifelong friendships at times. And I don't see that happening much with generations below us.
Yeah. If I had a safety net when I had to go to like my friend Chris Berry's house, it was like I got this one invite, to this like popular kid's house who's I don't want to brag, but Chris Berry and I are still really good friends, and he was totally popular. You know,
He's a
and
cool guy.
like all the guys I played football with and stuff. I feel like if I would have had a phone at that party, I wouldn't have said a word, and no one would have ever gotten to know me. I would absolutely walking into that. His backyard had a full on like resort style pool with like an old 7-Up machine. It wasn't even a Coke machine. It was just a fully stocked antique 7-Up machine that you could just free, no quarters. You just get as many sodas as you want. His parents didn't care. In fact, they're the ones who filled it up. And so if I didn't have to, I mean, I drank the soda. I ate maybe a pound and a half of Wheat Thins and Red Vines, and finally I had to talk to someone. I didn't have a phone. I was like, "What are you doing here, Marlon?" And I was like, I'm Marlon, Wheat Thins."
Great. Yeah.
What are you doing here?
Yeah, what are you doing here? You're not part of us. But then I just kind of had to just keep talking until I was.
Yeah.
Yeah. Shout out Chris Berry.
I'm just thinking about if I can remember the shift, and I'd have to think about it for longer, but the shift between hanging out with my friends before phones and then having phones. And it was similar, but still different for sure. Different enough that I feel like it changed our dynamics. And then, yeah.
What year was it? How old were you?
Middle school. Well, so here's the thing. So middle school, I didn't have a phone. In 8th grade, I got that flip up phone that I was talking about earlier.
Sidekick.
But in middle school, I believe I was in 6th grade, maybe even in 5th. I got an iPod Touch for the first time. So at home or anywhere where there was Wi-Fi, I did have access to apps and messaging and things like that. And yeah, it's crazy to me to think about, because I feel like that is the time that I was getting an iPod Touch is the time I would say for a lot of kids now, they're getting an iPhone, which is similar, but I feel like different enough that it's pretty impactful.
The mental health correlation is actually more in line with the front-facing camera. The decline of mental health is the front-facing camera than anything else.
Which makes sense. I don't know. Yeah, it would be so interesting to me to, of course I can't go back in time, but it's like almost going back to that first question that we were talking about of, it's like, when did I notice that my phone was my safety net? And I just think about, for me, if I didn't have a phone, I feel like high school would have been a lot better of a time. And high school was okay for me. I don't feel like I had any like crazy experiences or anything super out of the ordinary, but just constantly on my phone. I feel like my world was my phone. And
when you see the article, I sent you an article earlier today about the 8 states that are looking at banning phones during the school day. What is your reaction to that?
I support it. I actually was also just recently having a similar conversation with some of my friends. I think being in high school and having my experience, I can completely understand why it would be kind of a shock, and why, at least for some of the students, there would be a lot of pushback, because it's that sense of like, well, you can't take this from me. You can't, like, I'm going to do what I want to do. Yeah. But also having my experiences and now being in the place where I am now and reflecting back and feeling like I want to be more disconnected from social media, which is not the case for everyone. But being in that place, I fully support it. And I do think that my high school experience would have been significantly different had I not had phones. And in my high school, we technically were only supposed to use our phones during passing period, so in between classes and at lunch. Honestly, it might have just been at lunch, but then everyone would just use them during passing period anyway.
Who's gonna enforce that? It's like unenforceable.
Yeah, so it's like I can't even imagine what it's like to have phones out during class. I'm assuming that's what has been happening, or at least there's enough kids that are sneaking it where it's becoming a problem. That I can't imagine, because
it's constantly buzzing, in their pocket if they're not looking at it.
Yeah.
When I was a substitute teacher, I had a girl that was FaceTiming, I think her brother who was in the military, and I let it go because I didn't know what to do. And he told me to get a real job from FaceTime, from the armed services. And it was the most savage burn I think I've experienced.
Oh my gosh.
What do you say to that?
I didn't say anything.
That's when you start enforcing that cell phone rule.
Thank you for your service.
Yeah, thank you for your service. But
you got
not in my class.
Yeah. So they're using phones in class for sure.
Yeah.
Wow. What a great anecdote. I feel like I constantly am hearing, so when LA Unified put out the policy that they were going to start to limit phones on campus, a bunch of parents pushed back, a bunch of kids pushed back and said, you didn't do enough. You didn't listen to the student voice enough. You didn't do, and I get that because the student voice is so important. And I'm genuinely speaking, it needs to be part of every big decision made for our students. And to make a decision without the student voice would be to alienate them further, and it just wouldn't even be respectful. Those are going to be the people taking over the companies we run today. They're going to be running the world, and that's what we need to model as well. But I want to say that there are things that I would have said and wanted to do as a teenager that I felt like I was missing out on, that I shouldn't be doing because they simply were not good for me. Mm-hmm. And I didn't really know what those things were. So at some point, when are we going to be honest about people who are actual experts? Gabe's a licensed therapist and a school counselor. He's seen it firsthand for years. I've had to read the studies. I've taught graduate school classes. We see and we know what this type of phone use does. You can read Anxious Generation. You can read iGen. There's no question of whether or not our youth, our students, should have a more limited access to social media and to their phones. But yet I constantly hear people say, well, what about the student voice? Students say, just teach us how to use it better. But what they're not understanding, that they unfortunately, at some point, someone has to be strong, be a leader, and say, look, this was designed to trick you. You couldn't even begin to understand it at this age. And so we have to be able to limit it, just like we did with cigarettes, just like we did with alcohol, and like should be done with pornography.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we failed them with that. And I think we failed them with cigarettes they were when, in the 60s and 70s, used to be Fred Flintstone cartoons selling cigarettes. Your doctor recommends Winston cigarettes over Marlboro or whatever was happening then. It's really not different. And we know the effects. So, if you're nervous about, not having access to your phone, I get it. It has found a way that we can't ignore the feeling of missing out. It feels like we might die, but we do have to come together and actually help our students. If I fed Oliver what he wanted to eat every day, then he would be sick all the time. And probably even more important, as an adult, driving past 5 fast food restaurants on the way to work, if I fed myself what I wanted to eat every day, I have a fear of missing out anytime I see Ronald McDonald. If I see Grimace, I know right then I am not drinking a delicious Grimace shake. But I can't do it.
Limited time only.
Yeah. The McRib's there. I need to be there too, but I missed out this last time. And there's something to say for that. I don't want to brag.
Yeah.
But we have to start helping our youth understand that, hey, sometimes the best way to show that you love somebody is to look at the facts, the objective facts about how something's going to make someone feel, how it's going to affect their mental health, and take it away.
Yeah, and I feel like that was and is very much my experience of being in high school and having my phone and living through all of that. It's like, yes, all those feelings are very real feelings. And at the time, I couldn't understand it or even begin to try to understand and make sense of everything that was going on and what I was feeling. But now, being, even just a few years removed in the scheme of things from high school and being a little bit older, and maybe my brain is just more developed,
I think it should be said that you are above average intelligence. It's not like you were behind everyone and they were understanding this.
But I just think, like I fully support everything that is going on with cell phone bans and the legislation around that. And I know one of the arguments has been around school safety and if there's, an active school shooter or any of that. And having experienced an active bomb threat in high school, having my phone made it worse because I immediately started, and everyone around me started Googling. And I know people think like, oh, well, I want to be able to talk to my parents if this is the last time I'm going to talk to them, which is so valid. I also did text my mom, but I also started Googling what was going on, which just immediately made me feel 10 times worse. And it ended up not being anything. It was fine. But that's my perspective on that too, of like, it doesn't
I can't imagine
help.
Yeah, I can't imagine the horror that would be learning that your kid is in danger at school or anywhere else, and how much I personally would want to talk to him. I would. I would want nothing more than to talk to him and to save his life. However, if I'm being realistic, then what I would say is his best chance of survival in that situation is to have his eyes and his ears in the situation, not talking to me 100%. So that I can have a great goodbye. If something ends up happening, that's going to be terrible. But if it ends up happening because he thinks he needs to text me and he doesn't get out of the way in time, it's just not anyone who's been in a life or death moment and where you have to make quick decisions and good decisions and you have to control a big crowd, especially of kids, having a phone or any way to any kind of distraction, especially a phone that rings, is going to take away from the actual safety of the situation that you could have. There's just no other way to look at it. So I get it. I want to validate any dad or mom out there that says, I want to talk to my kid and make sure they're okay. That's about you. If they're in a school violent situation where there's school violence, they're not okay. And you have to just hope, tell them you love them when they leave. And we live in a horrible world that happens.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not going to help them survive to talk to you and say goodbye. It's not like it's a plane crashing. It's going to happen either way. They can get out of the way sometimes.
Yeah. And on the bright side too, you say take it away. And so I've heard when I've had that conversation with kids and it's kind of been like, I need this, or it's my coping skill, or I've heard those conversations from teens and youth. And thankfully what we can replace it with is cheap and available. And that's face-to-face in-person relationship and facing the frustration and sadness and fear head on, surviving that, finding other ways to face it and doing that day in, day out, because we're raising a generation and that can't do that, and who are going to be in charge and are going to have to be making these decisions and facing these kind of incredibly difficult circumstances. And right now, they aren't capable of doing that because they can't handle the frustration of not having the device. And life is
that's a great
hard.
point, Gabe.
Yeah,
life is hard,
and
you
pretty
have to
hard
be
if you
engaged.
can't. Yeah, absolutely. And that, I appreciate you sharing that and being vulnerable, Marlon, because I see where parents are coming from with that, and it's really got to start with the adults. Producer of the year over here made a good point talking about what about our adult brains, and kids are going to do what's modeled for them, not what you say. So I know.
Yeah, what is that? How much of our adult behavior as parents is affecting our ability to take away or limit our kids' screen time? Mm-hmm. What have you seen, Gabe, as a counselor, as a therapist?
Well, it's got to start with the relationships within the family. And I did a mental health talk for a middle school a couple months ago, and parents are asking me, they can't function without their phones, or what do I do? And let's, break it down, take baby steps here. What does dinner time look like? I learned this from you, Marlon. What does dinner time look like at your home? Can you put those phones away for a half hour a night and prioritize those relationships? And kids are going to respond to that, because even if they don't know it, they are craving those relationships. So that's my advice to those parents. And I have empathy and respect for the job they're doing and the challenges they're facing. But if you aren't modeling those relationships to kids, how are they going to know? They're not going to learn it from Instagram. They're not going to learn it from media or even their peers oftentimes. So you got to have a kid like Oliver who's willing to be the outlier and not give in to those pressures. And you have to model that just like you have for Oliver. So I think that's the way forward, I think.
I feel like at least I have done a lot of grandstanding, soapboxing, if you will. a lot of red-faced opinion giving. So, and I think we have plenty of that already. So what we don't always have and what we need are ways that we can actually improve our mental health, whether it's by limiting technology or even sometimes using technology to do that. So I want to go around, talk with each of us, what helps when it comes to technology use. So for me, I'll say having the example, having my kids and my wife in the room when I'm sort of wanting to do nothing but get lost in whatever's on my screen, that helps me. Just being in the room, and sort of the deal I made with myself is if there are other human beings in the room and they're open and willing and ready to engage in conversation, or I can listen to them or connect with them, then I got to put my phone away. I got to turn it off. I got to put it in the other room. And that actually leads to one other thing that helps with us. We only have one charging station in our house. And so it's kind of an inconvenient location. And so if you need to charge your phone, it does need to go downstairs in the entryway. And then, that helps. We have an alarm in case someone breaks in case any of y'all are thinking about it. Don't even try it. But our phones downstairs entryway if people are in the room and ready to talk. What about you guys?
It's a good question. The first thing, I have a couple thoughts on this, but the first thing that came to mind for me is just trying new things. I think that at first, especially if you are younger, it can feel scary to not be on your phone. But finding things that make you excited or bring you joy are really important and helpful. And if you don't know what those things are, I say just try something. Anything that you're curious about or that speaks to you even a little bit. So picking up a
Do you have any
book.
kind of example? Yeah. What kind of examples have worked for you?
I was going to say reading. Reading is a favorite of mine. I actually am just starting to get back into it. I've been in a little bit of a reading slump, but it's been really nice. And any sort of expression.
We're talking fiction? Wait, whoa,
Yes.
whoa. We gotta go back to this reading thing.
Okay, let's go. Rewind.
First of all,
Yep.
I'm inspired already. You actually, genuinely, like you're doing a great job explaining what actually helps, and I can tell it's genuine. So I think people are going to be liking that. What are you reading?
So I just finished a poetry book, actually. It's called Inward by Young Pueblo. But it was just a short poetry book, and I like poetry every now and then. But aside from reading, I mean, a few things that come to mind for me personally are just anything creative. I've gone through different phases of what that looks like, but drawing, painting, working with clay, making keychains, the list goes on, but just experimenting and trying
that's some of the coolest
something
I've ever heard. That's seriously so cool.
Thanks.
Yeah.
And movement, I was going to say a second thing that could be helpful. I mean, could fall into this category too, but just trying to recognize your patterns and be mindful when you are starting to feel a little overwhelmed and, recognize if it's related to your phone. And even if it's not, putting your phone down, I think could always help with just taking a moment. Breathing exercises are great. Going for a walk. I'm a big fan of music, which is played through my phone, but just not looking at the screen. And I think music and just being present in what you're listening to can be very helpful too.
This is 100% more helpful than what I said. So
I think yours was great.
Well, no, I appreciate that. But yours is definitely like digital native. I've been through this. I know what helps. And it was like a little less judgy than mine too. Mine was kind of like, if you got more than one charging spot in your house.
One other thing that just came to mind for me too is, along with the like recognizing and being mindful, is setting a time limit, because I feel like that's a baby step instead of just, going from all or nothing. I think it can be helpful to say, okay, I'm going to allow myself to be on my phone, but until this time or for 10 minutes or whatever the case may be. And then once that amount of time has passed, then switch into, okay, I'm going to put my phone down and I'm going to do this, or
so you don't get locked into that kind of like distracting doom scrolling.
Yeah. And I just feel like it can be a first step to then start recognizing. And then I feel like this ties back into what Gabe was saying earlier about almost like exposure therapy in a lot of ways of once you start doing it and you recognize like, oh, this is actually helpful and this makes me feel good, then you want to do more of that. And it's really just learning and training and recognizing patterns and working on reframing those and changing those in a way that's helpful for you.
That's so hopeful. Yeah, that's so hopeful.
I'm glad.
Gabe, what do you got?
Yeah, I like that. Both your answers a lot. I'll just give two things that I'm working on right now. My therapist is actually on maternity leave, so I'm missing her, but I think so.
Let it out. Let it out.
Yeah, I'm glad we have this space for me to treat it. No, just kidding. She's coming back soon, but something.
We'll look forward to an update.
I will. I'll provide one. Yeah. Therapy. Yeah, at least monthly therapy for me. Mm-hmm. I've had the same therapist since they made me get one in graduate school, so I stuck with that one. That was good advice, and I took it for class credit, and now I do it for my personal reasons. And I think just right now, I'm really just being comfortable with the uncomfortable, the uncertainty. It's an uncertain time with unique challenges that we've never faced. Half the state's on fire, and it's a scary time for multiple reasons. So being comfortable with the uncertain, being focused on what I can control. And just a fun one is I'm trying to, if I think of a friend or if I have a friend I haven't reached out to in a while, just making that phone call and being intentional with that, whether it's a friend from high school or college or whoever it may be, and then seeing if I can't segue that into a in-person hangout if they're in the area. But just making that phone call, even if it might weird them out and maybe they don't want to talk to me, but those are fears that I might have, but usually ends up fun. And if it doesn't, we just go back to doing our own thing anyway. So taking that risk and reaching out to people too.
So a little courage goes into that. I think that's great. Last couple episodes ago, we had Sarah Rice, friend of the pod, on, and she mentioned putting your phone in a plastic container just to interrupt the reflex of picking it up, make it just a little less convenient. That's a good one. Just the mindlessness that sometimes comes with like, okay, I might start to feel something. How can I not? And then you have to like open a Tupperware or something. That's another practical one that Andrea reminded me of. And I'll say for me, and this is genuine, this conversation, hanging out, speaking of Andrea, who is definitely my favorite, but I love both of you as well. I feel like part of the reason to do a podcast, I would suggest doing a podcast if you want to feel better. It doesn't have to be good. This one's okay, but just talk to people, and it's a good excuse to just sit for an hour or 2 hours and hang out, be honest, and put it out there. Maybe someone will be helped by it and they can connect with it. So thank you both for being here, for being honest, for being open. Great to see you both. Thank you so much for being on the show. Gabe, it's been wonderful to have you on. It's a real full circle in both having you on and also both of our faces. And so and for those of you watching the video can see what I mean. All right. Till next time. Thanks for joining us today. We hope it helped. Stay connected with us at thishelpspodcast.com.